Hello, and thanks so much for joining us for MidAmerican Gardener. I'm your host, Tinisha Spain, and joining me in the studio today are two of our gardening buddies here to talk about all things spring, finally. Before we jump in, let's have you guys introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Nelson. Wear a lot of different hats. You'll find me online at groundedandgrowing.com and on campus teaching Hort 105 vegetable gardening.
And basketball practice and
basketball
baseball
practice, baseball practice soon to start, musical rehearsal, yes, all the things.
Yes.
Chauffeur mode.
Many hats, many hats. All right, John.
And I'm John Bodensteiner. I'm a Vermilion County Master Gardener, and I do also volunteer teach at Schlarman High School. I take care of the greenhouse there, and I like just about all different types of plants. I dabble with a little bit of this. I like to try new trinkets and
gadgets and all kinds of stuff. So as things are greening up, we talk a lot about these first early plants, and some of the first ones, the early ones, are not great. And so John was willing to go out and grab a couple things to talk about. Maybe you'll see these in your yard, but if you do, it would be a great idea to get rid of them. So tell us what to look for and how we can help with these invasives.
So right now is a good time to go looking for bush honeysuckle. It is getting into our parks, our state parks, our federal parks, even our city parks. And this is bush honeysuckle. And it's one of the first to leaf out. This looks a little wilted right now because I didn't get it last night. And this can pull out, if at this size, it pulls out very, very easily. This is probably came up last summer or fall. The birds planted it. The birds will eat the little red berries. There's very little nutritious. It's not good for them. They usually go through the bird fairly quickly. They're usually sitting in a tree or near a flower bed or in the woods. And almost every seed that they digest or semi-digest is stratified, and you almost get 100% germination rate. This is very, very, very invasive. Probably one of our worst in the state. Wouldn't you say?
Horrid.
And if you see them this size, they're easy to pull out. Once they get bigger, they get a little bit harder. And if you wonder, is that a bush honeysuckle? If you pull it up or cut it off, as you can see on this stem, it is hollow, and that is a good way to tell it. If it's bush honeysuckle. If it's bush honeysuckle in this size, what I would do is cut it off at the ground and then get the strongest
non-selective.
Yeah, the Roundup or glycified, and just paint it on that fresh cut. Cut it off and have it ready to paint on there. I would, that way you're not spraying it all over. You're just, and I've actually got a little dauber. You can buy like cosmetic daubers and just fill that. And I actually put a little bit of food dye in it so that I can tell exactly.
That's a good idea.
I like that idea.
Where I've done, and you want to get around these outside of the stem. Sometimes the stems can be like this big.
Yeah.
And if you get along this outside edge, that's where the xylem and phloem is, and that's what's going to take that glyphosate to the root and kill the plant permanently. But this is so much. I mean, I dug 60 of these. I pulled 60 of these out of one of my flower beds.
Wow. So you had a bird that was just camping out right there.
There was a whole herd of birds, apparently.
Like, seriously, any sort of wooded area you drive by this time of year, look in the sort of the understory, and all that green you see is honeysuckle. It's so rampant.
And the other one you were talking about was
the Callery pear, the ornamental pears that over the years when they first came out, they were kind of advertised as self-sterile, but that was when we only had really one cultivar out there. Now that we have multiple cultivars and they have crossed, and now they're producing fruit that can produce viable seeds. Same idea, birds are doing a great job spreading that far and wide. They're everywhere. They have a white flower this time of year. If you find them out in the wild, the ones that were planted in our yards don't have any thorns, but the ones that are these outcrosses have monster thorns on them. They're horrid. Yes, and so you could really hurt yourself on them. But look around, where you see them planted on purpose, and then if there's wooded areas nearby, off the interstate, on the side of the road, or just kind of scrubby forested lands, you'll see them this
Oh,
time of
yes.
year, all kinds of white flowers, and that's what they
Yes.
are. I found them in
On
my
the
flower
highway, that whole
Yes.
drive is just those white blooms
And
the
I
whole
found
way
them
over.
in my flower beds too.
Yeah, I
We
have
brought
some.
one on the show some years ago. Jennifer Fishburne found it
yeah.
in my yard.
Okay, so now you know what to look for if you're out there. There's just 2 examples.
Yeah,
of
there's
Rid of 'em
more.
if you can.
Right.
Get rid of them. Okay, so Jen, we'll go with you with your lovely show and tell.
Yeah, we kind of decided
Yeah,
great minds think
coordinated
alike,
this.
as if we planned it. I am a sucker for stuff that's blooming, and this is a plant I don't have, so I'm kind of a plant collector. I have the Thanksgiving cactus and the Christmas cactus, and this is an Easter cactus, also known as a spring cactus at some stores. And John brought in the Thanksgiving one.
This is the Thanksgiving. You can see the horns.
Yep, it's got those sort of spikiness on the leaves, where these are rounded like the Christmas cactus, but they're totally different genus than the Christmas cactus. But the same idea, they have to have a period of cool temperatures and actually at least 8 hours of darkness, I think it is, in order to flower. So John has gotten his to reflower because of his access to a greenhouse, which I have access to, so you got my wheels spinning. But I think at home, if you had a back bedroom that was kind of cool, 50 degrees-ish, or in your back room or basement, something where we'll get 8 hours of darkness a day.
I wouldn't go below 50, but
No.
Are you talking like poinsettia darkness, like dark, or?
I don't think it's like poinsettia darkness.
Okay.
No. And just reduce no direct sunlight.
No direct sunlight,
Got
but just
it.
kind of like use the natural for 8 weeks before the bloom time. So if the bloom time's this time of year, we're talking a time of year that would be naturally dark anyway.
Gotcha.
So I'm thinking, fingers crossed, that it'll be like with my Thanksgiving and Christmas cactus, that it just kind of cooperates with what's going on naturally, and
Gotcha.
it's not relying on me, which is
please
could be a
don't.
bad. I got too much going on.
The flowers are absolutely gorgeous.
They're really different
Very
looking than
dainty.
the Thanksgiving Christmas
these are
ones.
completely different than the
Now,
Thanksgiving.
do these have to remain houseplants, and what will you do with them after they flower? Can you plant them out? Will they stay inside?
They're not hardy here,
No?
so they would be a house plant at my house. But you were told you can propagate them pretty easy.
Yeah,
Sure.
this is one I had, I broke one off, and so if you're transplanting them, and you break off, don't throw those away. I did this one here, maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks ago, and you can already see it's starting to put some little baby growth up there. So I know it's rooted, and all you have to do is, I broke this off on purpose, but all you need to do is just get down as close as you can. And a lot of times, if you look at the top of these, you're going to see little hairs on there. They already have the root hairs on, and all you have to do is dig a little hole in your soil, and
There you go.
push it in.
Yep.
And I've planted, this will grow.
Now, for folks at home, if you do break one of those off, do you need to let it callus over?
It's
And for how
it's
long?
better.
Like a day or two till it's dry.
Yeah,
Okay.
until if you feel it and it looks kind of chalky or white,
Yeah.
then you know it's calloused off.
And these are a little different than a regular desert cactus because they're in more of a peaty-based mix. They like it a little more wet than desert cactus, but you want to be careful not overwater them because that will kill them. So water it thoroughly, but let it dry out before you water it again.
Yeah, they'll rot off if you overwater them. So make sure you have a good hole so that there's good drainage. Use good potting soil.
And when they're in that cool period before you're getting them set up to bloom, they need to be really dry too.
Okay.
So just forget about them during that time.
We can do that.
We could do that.
We can
I got that mastered.
Exactly. Okay, so we're going to go back a little bit. We had a couple of shows ago, we had a question about moles and voles and how to control them and or get rid of them in your landscape. And so one of our viewers found John via the phone book, and they had a nice 45-minute chat about this. So take it away. She said she had some advice.
Yeah, Mrs. Henning from Milford called me, and we had a nice talk. We talked about other things, but apparently there was some question about how to get rid of them. Well, this is her solution. I don't know. You have to be very careful doing this. And I'm sure that the U of I is probably not on their
Yeah, cover your ears, Professor.
their top of the list, but she poured straight Clorox down. She punched a little hole into the trail and just poured a little bit of Clorox. She said the first time she did it, it splashed a little bit and she got some underclothes. She said, I learned to be very, very careful. And so, if you have a real problem and you've tried everything else, this might be something to try. And the other thing she talked about was the daffodils that her mom brought her. She had dug some up and they had the roots, or the bulb was still there. She took them and planted them. She brought them for her birthday. And so I brought one just to show. But if you plant these, you dig these up, they can last for 40, 50 years.
Those are one that can just outlast you.
And she said that every year on her birthday now, they bloom for her and she thinks of her mom.
That's very
That's
sweet.
so nice.
I thought that was really special. A lot of people have called me and talked to me about their daffodils. They have a big clump and they're not blooming, or they only get 1 or 2 blossoms out of the whole batch.
Time to divide them.
It's time to divide them. They're too thick. You may have put more soil over. They may be too deep. So dig them up, plant them so that 3 times the size of the bulb, deep, and divide them, and you'll have them. You'll have them then for 50 years.
Yeah, but you should really divide them later, right? This is where I get tripped up.
Yeah,
Because you got to mark them now so that you can do it in the fall.
And once the leaves start to dry up, then you can dig them up.
Yeah.
Once the leaves are gone, and that's another thing. Don't cut the leaves off.
Right.
Same with tulips, right?
As tulips, anything, leave those leaves on until they start to yellow. I know they can look kind of ugly, but if they start to yellow, then the photosynthesis is stopped. They're not putting any more energy into the roots, and you can dig them up.
It's always hard to leave them alone though, because they start to look a little ratty right when the flats of garden center plants are ready to come home. So there's a little crossover there when you want to,
Well,
and you can cut the flowers off.
Yeah.
You can cut these off so that they don't put energy into making seeds.
I've done that, but I've had stuff that it's coming up into June and the foliage still looks good, and I'm like, seriously? Or it's like, we've been getting ready for like 4th of July at our house, and we've made the executive decision to it's been around a while. We're going to cut it, even though it still looks halfway decent.
Wow.
Well, because like you said, it's just in the way.
Yes,
of,
I'm ready to
of
move
other
on.
stuff.
Yes.
Well, and if you can intersperse them in stuff like hostas or something that's going to kind of cover it up, that helps.
And they're laying down. What I've done is take like a scissors and just make an angled cut.
Sure.
And so then they stand up, and they're still getting some photos if they're green.
That's a good idea.
That is,
And
do
that way,
something, kind of split the difference.
Yeah.
Okay. Ornamental grasses, let's talk about that. Diane in Oakwood sent us an email. She says, we inherited an ornamental grass at our new home. It's about 6 foot tall, fairly large in diameter. It's at the end of the driveway and it needs a trim. I know nothing about this. When do I do it? How do I do it? And how far do I go down? So I'm assuming that the last year's foliage is what she's seeing now. So if you guys wouldn't mind just kind of tag teaming this, because I know you both probably wrestle with ornamental grasses.
There's a lot of different ways to do it. How we do it at home is kind of bundle it up with some sort of twine, tie it off, and then go to town with either, if you've got like big hedge clippers, or we've used a Sawzall, because that can be really tough. The old grass can be really tough to cut. If you get kind of a buildup of so much stubble over the years that it's really thick, my husband's been known to burn it, which I was explaining this to some students last week, and they were kind of like, whatever, until I said fire, and then they're like, really?
And
tell us more.
Don't do that if it's too close to the house.
Right, exactly. Like, use discretion.
I have had people do that, and they melted their plastic siding.
Right.
So
be careful.
Be very careful.
There's
kind of like the disclaimer on the Clorox. Disclaimer on the burning the stubble too.
So usually you cut them back 4 to 6 inches above the ground, and you want to do it before you start to see any new green, because you're going to damage the new growth if you lay too long. I would say it should be done very soon.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people with the beneficial insects are saying, don't throw it away, cut it off, and leave it lay there until May 1st. Or leave it lay somewhere in a protected area, because they do host a lot of beneficial insects. If you look at it, it's kind of like a marshmallowy inside.
Okay.
And so a lot of beneficial insects will lay their eggs in there, and if you wait till May 1st, most of them have hatched, and then you're safe to dispose of it. If it's too big, you know, I take my hedge trimmers, and that's what I do.
Yep. Just lop it off.
If it's too thick, and you'll see the center of it start to die, that means it's just gotten too big. There's no sun getting into that center part. A Sawzall works, or a backhoe.
Yeah, you'll break a shovel on it trying to dig it
my
up.
gosh.
It's so strong. But yeah, Sawzall just kind of carve out a wedge and
stick
cut
it right there in the
use one of
center.
those longer blades, get underneath it, and it's going to survive. I mean, just plant it, and you can make probably a dozen plants out of one circle, and
if you want.
Yeah. Or
So
share with
she
your
can
neighbors.
get aggressive with that first chop and just go all the way.
Go all the way, and you know, I usually anywhere between, you know, depending on
Okay.
Because the new growth will cover that up.
And then this is something that you only have to do once a year?
Yep.
Okay.
In the spring.
There you go, Diane. Let's see, what do we want to talk about now? Let's do the feeder. Rita Pierman from Georgetown, my hometown. Hello, Rita. Let's see, she says we have an upside down finch feeder, which originally had 4 plastic rods inserted through it to make purchase for the finches. Long story short, something is chewing on them, and they've had to replace them before. She wants to know if we have any idea what might be chewing away the perches, and what are some solutions. So, John, what do you think?
I would think a squirrel.
I agree. Probably a squirrel.
And I was trying to think, what could she use that they're not going to chew through? So I was thinking, you know, those long nails, they're about like that long, that you hammer through an eave and you put on along your eave troughs. I dare a squirrel to chew through one of those. And they would be nice because they're galvanized, so they won't rust. And you could push that through,
work.
and that's what I came up with.
Okay, that's a solid plan. So give that a shot. See if the squirrel can get through the nail. Let's see here. We had a couple more. Liz Jones, and we've had this question on the show before, but I like to get a variety of answers because everyone brings something different to the table. So Liz Jones says, what edible flowers can I grow in my yard? So you put together a list of
I got a list. It took me 2 pages. First thing though, there's lots of things that you couldn't technically eat. You usually eat only the petals. On 95% of it, you're going to only eat the petals. Make sure that they're fresh, and make sure that they've not been sprayed on. Make sure you wash them, especially if you have pets in the yard or your neighbors are around. You don't want to be eating
Who knows what?
who knows what.
Nature.
Yes, nature.
Again, most of these you eat just the petals. So hibiscus, it is kind of one of those that a lot of people make teas or jams, and it has kind of a cranberry flavor. Most of these flowers are somewhat bitter, bitter sour.
Some of them have parts that are bitter if you don't remove them, like on rose petals.
And marigolds, they said
I didn't know that
you can eat those or drink or make a tea out of those, but there's a white edge that you're supposed to cut off because that's where the bitterness comes from. Hyssop anise has a very nice anise flavor. Bee balm, that's another name, is Oswego tea, and they make wonderful teas. Again, you would, on the flower, you would just use the petals, but on the leaves, you can also use that and make a tea out of it. Dianthus, I haven't tried this one, but I'm going to, because it says it's like a spicy clove. Fennel leaf, there again, you can use the leaf or the flower, and it has an anise or licorice flavor. The cilantro, it has a citrus flavor. Mint, if you want to make a mixed drink or something like that. Squash blossoms.
Oh,
yes, we eat
I didn't think
those.
about that.
Yes.
Daylilies go in there too.
Yeah, chives. Those purple flowers, you put those on a salad and just pick the little flowers off. Make sure they're fresh flowers because they dry, and you don't want a dry, flaky flower in there.
Right, but now you're fancy.
Now you're fancy. Yes.
Dandelions, again, you can, dandelion flowers, there's so many uses. You can make wine, you can make honey, you can, jam, you can, wine, you can just about anything. And again, it's just the petals. Lavender, you can use that in sachets or lovage. It has a celery flavor. If you ever buy celery salt, if you really look at it, it's not celery, it's actually lovage that they've ground
interesting.
up. Chamomile, again, that's a tea that you can make. Calendula, that's, again, it has a nice flavor, but it also has a dye if you want to make something that has a little bit of yellow color. Nasturtiums, they have a real nice peppery flavor. Rose, I didn't realize this, but the darker the color of flower, the more intense the flavor.
Oh, interesting.
I just want to make fancy ice cubes for a garden party that doesn't exist.
And that would be real nice to get some roses and just pansies and violet. Right
I've
now,
got a great recipe for lavender cookies
Okay,
for your garden
for my
party.
non-existent garden party, one of these days, I'm going to be just fancy enough.
the pansies and violets, all those violets that are growing, they're,
Perfect
you can
in
pick
ice
those.
cubes.
And again, perfect in ice and thyme. So
It's all taking shape.
Some of them, there was more, but I figured, well,
That's a great list. That's a great list to start with. So let's see. Dawn in Macon wrote an email. She has 2 hydrangeas that are the bush variety. They grow big and beautiful, and the greenery grows big and beautiful, but they do not bloom. She says, I keep waiting, and I know there must be something I can do to help them. Is it the soil? What suggestions do you have to maybe get her hydrangea to bloom? And we get this question
like
a lot.
The first of 2025 that I've experienced it. Yes. Does she know what it is? She doesn't know what kind it is, or if she planted it or not?
Doesn't say. She didn't say in the email.
So it depends on the harshness of the winter. Do you have any green? Did you cut it back last fall? Did you cut it to the ground? Is there, some of them only bloom on
New wood
or old wood.
Old wood, yes.
Some of them
Sorry,
only
got it
bloom on
backwards.
old wood, and you need those shoots coming off from last year's growth. Like the Annabelle hydrangeas, those you can cut to the ground.
Those don't care.
They don't care.
Or paniculata don't really care because they bloom on new wood.
Yeah. So sometimes it's the soil. Sometimes it's the amount of sunlight they're getting. And sometimes it's just a bad plant. I mean, it is.
Troubleshooting hydrangeas is rough.
It is.
It's hydrangeas. There's some have cycled through and their DNA is just not good.
So let's talk about that. We've got a couple minutes left. When is it time to get the shovel and pull the plug on something that just has not been working? And we get a lot of flack for this because there are people that write in and say, don't cut that tree down or don't. Yes, but we need to give ourselves permission sometimes to move on. So what is your strategy for?
If I have something that is totally failed and I am frustrated with it, I may just pull it up and throw it away. But not very often.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will try a different spot first.
Yes.
That's the thing. If I can dig it up and move it, and I usually do this in the spring. I usually know what I did make notes of what failed last year. And if it's been a couple of years, I'll move it. And give it another chance, give it at least 3 years there.
Okay.
After 3 years, you're out of here.
All right, Jen, what's your strategy?
I have to kill it at least 3 times before I give up.
You have to keep trying.
I have to keep trying, and I'm like John. I will think, well, maybe it's just not the right spot. So just trying some
maybe a little plant food.
Yeah, maybe a little.
Not nitrogen, but maybe some phosphorus or potash.
Right, but at least 3 times. But that doesn't mean I haven't exceeded that limit.
Yes.
Depending on the plant.
It's hard to do that, but Kelly was one of our panelists who was always trying to get people to just be brave and just yank it out of there. If it doesn't make you happy or it's not performing well or whatever, just yank it out and find something else that you like.
But the hydrangea thing, going back to that, do you want to spend the time of figuring out how to overwinter it so that maybe all those stems don't die back all the way to the ground? sometimes that is the major like decision point. Like, how much work do you want to put into this for
Yes.
real? Because the reality is a lot of us don't have the time.
That we're in zone 6 now. It's a zone 6, 7, and there's a lot of times in the wintertime where it freezes back to the ground every year. And if I mulch it, if I mulch, you know, and I usually put mulch, you know, I'll rake.
Do you wrap it and then throw the
I'll
mulch in?
wrap it and put the mulch in there, and I get figs. Now it'll grow. I usually trim it, you know, anything above that mulch is going to die, even into the mulch a little bit.
Right.
Wherever there's leaves, I'll wait till it starts to come back, and it's like the hydrangeas that are late. Your perennial hydrangeas that are late coming back, and it'll grow to 8 feet. It'll reach the it loves hot, dry weather, and I've gotten figs off of it.
Okay. That's the game.
So,
You just got to gamble with it.
But there's some years that I don't, and it's usually that I have, you know, forgotten about it or not mulched it enough in the wintertime.
All right, guys, we are out of time. That is the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, too, for coming in and chatting with me today. Had a good time. If you've got questions, you can send them in to us at yourgarden@gmail.com, or just look for us on socials and search for MidAmerican Gardener. You can find us there and send us your questions now that we're all in gardening mode. Spring has sprung. It is time to get busy. We're all coming alive. So send us in your questions and we can get our gardens together at the same time. Thanks so much for joining us and have a good night.